very much like to introduce our dinner speaker. He is, of course, Guillaume Faye. And for more than a decade, Mr. Faye has really been one of the most prominent and controversial spokesmen for our race. The only thing is, he has only been known in Europe because only now, thanks to Arctos Media, and they have their representatives in the back of the room, are his remarkable works being translated into English. Now, Guillaume Faye in the 1970s, he helped start the French New Right, together with Alain de Benoit. But later, he began to speak and write much more straightforwardly about race, unlike the people who remained in the French New Right around Alain de Benoit. And it was his 1998 book, Archaeofuturism, that really put him in the center of what the Europeans called identitarianism and what we would probably call white racial consciousness. And then it was the appearance of The Colonization of Europe in 2000 and Why We Fight in 2001 that really established him as the foremost spokesman for our race on the European continent. In fact, it was The Colonization of Europe that warned of the demographic dispossession of our people in Europe that cost him about a 300,000 franc fine that was equivalent to about $60,000 and a suspended sentence under France's oppressive anti-free speech laws. In any case, it is a great pleasure and an honor for me to be able to introduce to you Guillaume Faye from Paris, my friend and comrade. Please welcome Guillaume Faye.
I will speak with my personal English, I'm sorry. It's quite different with English. It is American and European Brotherhood, the item, the sujet. It is American, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
No, yes. Brothers in Arms.
Brothers in Arms, of course. Well, it is during the 15th century, with the discovering of the American continent, that the peoples from European origin has begun a worldwide expansion and imposed their civilization all over the earth. This enormous historical event lasted until the 20th century. Spain was a dominating world power during the 16th century and at the beginning of the 17th. Then came the hour of France from the middle term of the 17th to the beginning of the 19th, from the accession of the Solar King, Louis XIV, Louis XIV, to the defeat of Emperor Napoleon in front of the Anglo-Prusso-Austro-Russian coalition. United Kingdom took the relay and was the first world power during one complete century from I'm sorry, my English is bad, from 1815 to 1914, after the European Civil War, inappropriately named First World War from 1914 to 1918, during which the victory of the Anglo-French armies was only obtained by the economical and military help of the young American nation, United States, emerged not only as the first world power, but as the planetary superpower that overwhelmed the others in all fields. This position of global supremacy of the United States and leadership has been never seen since the Roman Empire. Now, please, let us examine the destiny of Roman Empire. According to my compatriot, the historical searcher André Lama, the collapse of Rome was fundamentally created by ethnical chaos and disorder, by the lack of homogeneity in the upper and directing classes, but also in the basic people. Perhaps it is the same scenario that threatens the United States. Why did the US were the first world power? Is it by the reason of the natural resources, mineral agricultural resources or of the size of its territory? No, because in this case, Russia would have been the superpower, and it was not. To explain the historical event of the American superpower, we don't need, like always in the long river of history, physical and land causes, but the anthropological pattern of the American nation. The human background of the USA gathered like a symphony with these immigrants from European peoples. Anglo-Saxons, Germans, Dutch, French, Italics, Scandinavians, Slavs, each of them bringing their own genius, but each of them possessing the same global mentality, have gathered, forming a sort of new overseas Europe. The Europeans, author of the 18th century, called them amazed, the new word. The main cause of the American superpower is therefore the historical fact that America was a projection of Europe and then a synergic multiplication of the quality of the white European nations. White nations which, in Europe, never stopped to find the ones against the other, and by this reason weakened themselves and neutralizing themselves. You understand me? Because my English is quite bad. Very probably, an American nation which wouldn't be more from a European origin in its majority, but a melting pot of the world, with greater and greater proportion of mixed population, it would be impossible that this nation remains a superpower, or even an interesting and prosperous place to live in. The idea that the United States and Europe too would have prosperity and strength because there are more and more race mixed, because there are more and more an addition of all the people and origin of the world, is a very stupid illusion. Ethnical mixing, as pointed by Aristotle 2,500 years ago in his book Politica, does not give harmony, but it is a Greek term, chaos. American power and one main cause, synergy of European white peoples without war between them. This is only the notion of melting pot. At the origin did not mean the cosmopolitan mixture of all the people of the earth, but only the construction of a new nation from European nations, and only European nations. But the USA are less threatened than Europe by the colonization of population, although it exists too. An American author, Christopher Caldwell, published a very interesting book, Reflection on the Revolution in Europe, Immigration, Islam, and the West. He demonstrates that Europe is ethnically distorted, disfigured by immigration and a very rapid invasion of Islam. The French media, at 80% leftist, boycotted the translation of his book. And I was condemned personally to pay an enormous fine by the Court of Paris when I had written the same thing in a book, La colonisation de l'Europe. I was condemned for racism, accused of racism. But what is to be racist? Exactly that said de Gaulle, which was a racist. De Gaulle said, General de Gaulle, who's a racist like me, you know. France, it's a quotation, is historically of white race and European civilization. He said that on the TV. And he said, too, we must admit immigrants at the proportion of 2%, but only for Northern Europe. De Gaulle said this. If I say this now in France, we'll be condemned by court. De Gaulle said this, you know. But it was 40 years ago. The things have very much changed. But in Europe, where freedom of speaking is no more guaranteed by law, when you are defending, protecting your people, your race, against an intruder, against an invader. You are the attacker, you are the aggressor. You defend yourself, you white, you are the aggressor. As a white, you are by essence, by ontology, guilty. Your duty is to let the other races and culture invade your country because you have in yourself the original sin of being white. This is the speech of the ethno-majorcist ideology. Apologize, always apology, to be yourself. In French, we call this a new word. I can translate in English. It is la repentance. It means you must apologize always by everything, you know, colonization of Africa, everything, always la repentance, la repentance, la repentance. Sorry, we are very sorry, we are very sorry. I was a very hard militant of the building of the European Union under a federal form, with alliance at the west with the USA and at the east with Russia, under the form of United States of Europe, point of a white North Federation of the Earth. Unfortunately, we are going to see which is really the European Union. This European Union is perhaps a commercial and economical great power, but Europe is a sort of monster, according to the political analysis. A body without head, without will, without ethnical consciousness, without policy apart from the weak and flimsy human rights. An enormous mollusk without protection of borders, which refused to pay for military defense, but is paying handsomely masses of immigrants, of invaders, and the construction of mosques, 1,000 in France, more than in Morocco. Let us speak about the case of France, where the elites are organizing their own invasion by ethno-masochism. French population were globally the same. From the coronation of the King Clovis at the 5th century, in 481, official date of the creation of the French state, to the 20th century. I mean a Celtic background with German elements and the cement of Roman, Latin, and Gaelic culture. But the situation has dramatically changed, brutally been transformed. After 30 years of opening borders and mad population immigration, neither my father nor the General de Gaulle, from his tomb, would recognize the ethnical features and the shape of their own country. Nearly a quarter of the population is no more from European origin, especially in the young generations. Islam is the second religion after Catholicism, and if nothing changed, will be the first during this century. The situation is the same in other Western European countries. It is the threat of destruction of the European white German. German is a Latin word, cannot translate. German, the roots. And you must add to this the collapse of the white birth rate by comparison to high birth rate in the intruder's family. And you must add race mixing. Race mixing, now the métis, the man with mixed race, is an ideal, exactly like the bisexual behavior. The bisexual man, you know, is very good. Oh, you are not homosexual? You are not bisexual? Your lack of experience is terrible. The métis is the summit of the man, the métis, you know. Like was the Aryan for Gobineau, you know. But they are for métis, you know, they are for race mixing, only for the whites, but for the blacks. No. They must remain with his origin, the roots, it's very good. Never in the past, and the French historian André Lara, but we should speak about it after, said it was a decline of the soul, a decline of l'âme, a decline of the soul of the will in the white populations. These very strange things. Never in the past such a catastrophe occurred in Europe, worse than the great plagues of the Middle Age or the First World War. And with the complicity of political and intellectual elites, completely ill, completely mad, who are presenting as a chance, as a success, as a victory, and an achievement, which is exactly the reverse, a disaster, a scourge, a Warmtod, according to the word of Konrad Lorenz. This is a German word, which means, I translate in English, tepid death. There's a sense in English, I hope. Tepid death, Warmtod. We are in an Orwellian semantic reversion. Bad is good, illness is health, disparition is apparition. You know, when you say the first things occurred in France with riots, with enormous problem, they always said, it's no problem, it's a chance. And they said, you know, there is no links between insecurity, criminality, and immigration. There is no links. I said, yes, okay, you are right. There is no links between rain and rivers. There is no links. No links. It was. But the real war is not only the war at the borders. It is the war in the hospital, in the cradle, and in the maternity. A family of Turkish in Germany make 4 children. A family in Germany make 1 children. The land is belonging to those who make children, that's all. Look, for example, in Serbia, in Kosovo. The Muslim families made 5 boys. And the original family, 1 boy only, 1 children only, 1 child only. So, you know, after 20 years, it's obvious. It's an invasion. It's obvious. It's mathematically. You cannot previous thing generally. Technical thing you cannot previous. But which is demographic, you can previous. When you are seeing a school boys, you have said, these school boys with the race, with the face, will be the adults in 30 years. It is absolutely shows. The rivalries, mainly economical, which oppose United States and Europe, are jokes. By comparison to the new opposition, the new struggles of the 21st century. I mean the clash of civilization, according to Samuel Huntington, and this implies the concept of ethnopolemology, which includes the notion of race war, even Cold War. We're in a situation of race war, but it is a Cold War, for the moment, a Cold War. Much more interesting than the war against USSR, not really a war, you know. From a geopolitic and mainly ethnopolitics, new concept, ethnopolitics point of view, it is impossible from that USA and Europe will be separated. Anti-Americanism of certain European spheres is as stupid and as out of reality than the Russophobia of certain other spheres. We have all the same enemies, divided in 2. The intruders, the invaders, you know what I mean, and the inner poison, those who amongst the white people and intellectuals are overspreading certain death ideologies. Opposing white nations, the one to the others, is a suicide. Cold War, which opposed Western world to the USSR, and communism from 1948 to 1991 was a joke by comparison to the events that are in preparation for the 21st century. Page 7. A growing tension with an ethnical nature and background, with religion and civilization aspects, between globally the white world and the others, more and more numerous. The problem is that the first are not conscious of the struggle, the whites, not conscious of the struggle. They are naive. They feel guilty. They have lost their ethnical consciousness. And at the second, the others are proud of themselves, very conscious of the struggle, of the revenge. The revenge. I know that this game of chess is very complicated, And this is because of this complication that the politically correct class of intellectuals on both sides of Atlantic does not understand anything to the present time and situation. They don't understand the necessity of a white coalition. Very interesting things. Everybody say we are extremists. In fact, we are not extremists. The others are extremists. We are like Aristoteles. We are sapientes. We are sage. I don't know how you say that this word in English. Wise. We are wise. We are exactly as normal man in an asylum of fool. Exactly in an asylum of fool. They say, yes, we can. The answer, everybody in our country, in our house, you can go in my house, please, please. It's normal. It's normal. It's human rights. You know that. You say, no, 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 no. You are an extremist, Mr. Taylor, because you refuse that people enter in your house. You are an extremist. It's bad. A normal man accepts, you know. But when you say in Paris to a rightist, very leftist woman, why didn't you put your children in the public school where there's a great number of blacks and so on? They say, only because there is the level is not very good, you know, and there is criminality. And you ask, but there is no links between this criminality and the presence of blacks and Arabs? Oh, you are racist, it's horrible. You know. I met once in France a woman. She was aggressed in the street, and it's horrible. She was very rich and very leftist. And I said, oh, I suppose it was a Swedish, which is make the aggression against you, or the German, or Russian, perhaps, or the Polish, or the French. And I said, but who? It's not your problem. I said, but I hope it's not an Arab because you love him. Stop it, stop saying that. Of course it was. Of course it was. I don't have a relation with this woman now. But some American politics are anxious. Not a great number, but certain. When they see the growth of Islam in Western Europe, what would happen when France, Great Britain, Belgium, Netherlands, Denmark will have half of the population Muslim and from a non-European origin? What will happen? Do you know, as they call now London, Londistan? From this year, from the first time, the Greek London, there is 50% of the population which is not white. Do you know when certain spheres in France, Muslim sphere organized by Mr. Sarkozy, you know, called France, Frank Arabia. Interesting. Mr. Sarkozy is in his campaign, and he said, oh, it's horrible, we are divided. I organized the Schengen, I refuse now the Schengen Accords, the Schengen Treaty with opening of the European borders. He said, you are president since 5 years. And it is only now that you are conscious of this. You are mad. What do you do in the Élysée Palace? The geopolitical consequences will be terrible. In this case, no possible brotherhood between an Europe with more than 70 million of Muslims and the US. No more common civilization. If nothing changes, the words of France, United States, United Kingdom will have no signification, no contents. A bottle with the label Bordeaux wine, but filled up with oil, is no more a bottle of wine or Bordeaux, but a bottle of oil. Of course. They say, for example, in France, les minorités visibles, the visible minorities, speaking about Arabs, black, and so. And I respond to them. But we black, we white, we shall be the visible minorities in some years. In certain part of Paris and in London, in Brussels, the minorities, it is white. And in 10 years, there is no white minorities. No white minorities disappearing. The terrific hypothesis is that in the middle of the 21st century, no US, no Canada, no nation of Western Europe will be geopolitical group, mainly of white European roots, but geographic areas, populations, fulfilled with other population, and certainly neither prosperous nor powerful, in which our descendants will be minority. Two anecdotes. When Mr. Obama was elected as the president of the United States for the first time, a black, like in the Hollywoodian film, you know, it's a black president. It's a curse. It is a reality. Two black people at the Maison Blanche, at the White House. Incredible. All the black of France say, all the black association of France, very important now, say, you know, we must, Mr. Obama was the hero, the great hero in these spheres. Say, why in France the Chamber of Deputies, the Chamber of Representatives is only white? Why there is not a sort of projection of the real society with women, black women, and so, why not? And they make law for this. They call this parity, la parité, you know. They will oblige people, each party, to have a certain number of blacks, a certain number of Arabs, you know. And the election of Mr. Obama has an enormous impact on this, on the ideological point of view. Everybody says, you know, but United States, the superpower of the world, as the black president, we the black, we are the champions, and we wish exige that the French president will be perhaps too black. It was very, very important, the election of Mr. Obama. In Germany, in France, everywhere, for the first time, it is a real liberation. Of course, the rivalries in economy, geostrategy, culture between the United States and Europe exist. They are the nature of international relations, but they are secondary. It is not the central problem. In policy, we must always apply the Cartesian method, which is coming from the Aristotelian logic. This method is backed on two paradigmas and on the idea of rational hierarchy, no romanticism. First, to point out the main problem, which is the more important than the secondary problems. Secondary problems, rivalry between the United States and Europe, for example, you know, secondary problem. Two, define a plan, an aim, and which is clear, and major aim, targets, and not several, but one only. And this aim is what? You must, I have an aim. Define this aim. Preserve our nations as European origin nations. Preserve our nations as European origin nations. It's much more important than the problem of economy, than the problem of debt. You know, debt is in English word, debt, no. Of budgets or war in Afghanistan. It's much more important. During the war of Afghanistan, the identitarian, which Mr. Taylor, they say, you know, it's very interesting to say troops for the European in Afghanistan, or for Mr. Sarkozy to bomb Libya, you know. But the war is here. We bomb Libya with the English, but the borders are open, and all the North African can come in Europe, but we bomb Libya. For what doing? It is completely stupid. According to an organic and holistic logic, it exists 3 levels of membership of identity. The first level is the proximity, the closeness, that we call in French les patries charnelles. The translation is carnal homelands. You are fastened to your city, to your province, to your family. You can be from the Tennessee, or the Texas, or the Quebec, as I am from the Poitou, where in 732, Charles Martel, grandfather of Charlemagne, stops the Arab invasion. Or you can be from Corsica, the island of Corsica, whose flag is a cutted head of Moresco. Moresco means Arab. Because 1,000 years ago, they pushed back their invasion. Second level, your nation and its patriotism. You can be proud to be Russian, to be American, to be Polish, German, Italian, and so on. Third level, new level, overwhelming level, It lies in the superior category of ethnopolitics. It is the feeling to belong to a global people, like the word Italian said, you cannot translate in French or in English. Popolo e civiltà. Civiltà in Italian, it means race, culture, and civilization. And I say it exists, a European and American civiltà. The roots of the third membership are, of course, biological. And this is the comparison of the tree, which is a tree. There is three parts in a tree: the roots, the trunk, and the shelves. They call it feuillage, the shelves. The roots is a race, it's the biological, it's biology. The trunk is the culture, and the shelves is civilization. I mean expression of the culture. You need the three. You need the three level. If the roots are destroyed, you can have problems with trunk. You can have problems with shelves. You can have problems in your culture. You can have problems in the structure of the shelves. But never in the roots. Because if the roots are destroyed, it's definitive. If the roots of the tree are attacked, there's no trees. If the trunk of the tree is attacked, the tree can continue to go up. The shelves, the same thing. Look at Spain during the Reconquista. The germen of the Spanish people was intact, even of the Arab invasion. Of course, the cultures always missed him, but the roots were here. And the problem in Europe, like in the States, that the biological roots are threatened, deeply threatened, and this is quite terrible. And we belong, all of us, to a great people. And we have to be proud of this. Perhaps the most creative that Earth never saw, the civilization of white race, whose roots came from the ancient people between Atlantic and Ural. An American from Scottish origin, and a Russian of Novosibirsk, who does not speak a word of English, are much closer the one to the other than this American and his compatriots called Afro-American. Why? Why? Because they have the same mentality, the same German. When the French team of football, made up of 80% of black Africans or Maghrebian, speaking French, often approximatively, who obtained by favor the French nationality, when it confronts the team of little Croatia of Serbia, entirely white, entirely a European, I am for Croatia, I am from Serbia. And I am not for the so-called French team, Équipe de France. Unfortunately, a mass of my compatriots does not think like me. In front of the TV, they said, "Vive la France, vive la France, vive la France," with flags, you know. And all the French team is black, you know. And one French intellectual say it is no longer the team. They say in French, black blanc beurre. It means black Arabs in slang, black Arabs and white. It is the team, black. You know. The idea of citizen of the world, citizen of the world. We have citizen of the world, not of the moon, of the world, is a perversion, an anthropological stupidity, an impossibility. The elites and the dominant ideology in Europe, as in America, who created, thought up to this concept, are liars, menteurs, liars, and mad. Let you think to this idea, overwhelming new, not citizen of the world, but a worldwide and wide nation. Worldwide and wide nation. Difficult idea. New idea. Necessary idea. White, worldwide nation. Don't forget that the word nation is coming from the Latin natio, from the verb nascere, which means to be born. Natio means all those born from the same roots. The 21st century will be the century in which ethnopolitics will replace geopolitics all over the world. Has said the political philosopher, German philosopher Carl Schmitt, he said, you know, if you don't believe to this idea, you're and me believing to this idea. If you don't believe that the future of the 21st century was fighting between race, your enemy believe in that it was fighting between race. If you don't discover or admit your enemy admit you. And for your enemy, you are an enemy. So the problem is not you, but it is your enemy. It is the decision of your enemy, not your decision. If you say, I am a friend of everybody, but somebody said, no, I am your enemy, I won't kill you. What do you? I love you, not me. So the 21st century will be the century in which ethnopolitics will replace geopolitics all over the world. And now what to do? What to do? Because if you make analysis without saying what to do, we must be modest and ambitious, both. We have to climb up the stairs, step by step. First, by metapolitical and cultural and propaganda work, in order to create, at the world scale, a white identity, the consciousness and the feeling of it, according to the title of the last book of Jared Taylor, White Identity. Above the notion of right and left, above the problem of financial, economical. Of course, it's very important. But the main problem is white identity. The main problem is the roots of the tree, not the trunk, not the shelves, we said the after. When you have a house in fire, do you think, she's in fire, but I think the color of the doors are not good. We're changing the color. No, the first thing is to extinguish the fire. It's the most important thing, you know. The most important thing is stop immigration, make children, have the roots. It is the ideas which lead the world, which end up by transforming it, ideas and values. We must never be fatalistic, disheartened, discouraged, never. Never surrender. Our worst enemy is indifference, weariness, lack of faith from the other whites, from the other European or American. History is not written. Everything can occur if the will and the elderness exist. There is millions of examples of history of this. History is a Darwinian path. Always have the victory those who have confidence in themselves, proud of themselves. There is an American and European brotherhood because it is very simple. We are brothers by blood and by mentality, by ancient origins. What must be done is the creation of a planetary network of solidarity, of defense, of affirmation, of propaganda, in the most intelligent way, with no folklore and no nostalgia, inspired by our past and looking to a future, with and above American Renaissance. There is white civilization Renaissance from Moscow to Nashville and elsewhere, which is important. Jared Taylor had ended his conference in Paris last week, saying, Vive la France. I would say to answer to him, long life to America. Vive l'Amérique, mais l'Amérique blanche. An old proverb, it is my conclusion, of my native country, said, it is in French of Middle Age, bon sang ne saurait mentir. It means good blood cannot lie. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I met Nick Griffin. I'm with
Yes,
the
I know.
Council of Conservative Citizens.
Yeah.
And Nick Griffin, we have a chapter in Clemson University in South Carolina, believe it or not. We were very conservative. And he made a comment one time about the French elitists being in bed with the Arabs to create a Eurabia.
Yes, of course.
Okay? Now, we have that. Then we got the Rothschilds. I don't know how many of y'all know about the Rothschilds and that. You may laugh at me, but it's a real thing with the Rockefellers, Creature of the Jekyll Island. Read that if you haven't. Nice thing about it is if they're really competing against each other, that's a good thing because we'll never get it done. But would you please address Eurabia?
No, Eurabia is, of course, a name of certain spheres in France. It's not only in France.
So the French elitists versus...
Yes, no, it was a sort of idea of de Gaulle too, to create a friendship between France and the Arabic world, but it was an imperialist mentality. But it is possible to be friend with somebody if this somebody is not in your house.
We're not talking French. We're talking about somebody being in my house.
Yes, no, the idea of helping of France with Arab, it's completely stupid, it's completely blind, it represents absolutely nothing. And the idea of Mr. Sarkozy to build the Euro-Mediterranean alliance, even Mrs. Merkel say, it is, but in fact, the fact is, in France, in Belgium, in Great Britain, there is more and more Arabs, and the aim of the Arabs and the Islam, the aim, the long memory aim, is the invasion of Europe, of course. Yes. Yes, it is obvious, yes.
Monsieur Faye, comment peut-on combattre la honte européenne? How would you combat white guilt?
It is very, very good question. The only solution is a deep work of metapolitics, of propaganda. It's not a political work. It's to have radios. Look, for example, in France, in the TV, 80%, 90% of the emissions are ethnomasochist, with to be guilty. But despite of this fact, there is a great number of French people who vote for certain party which is not guilty, Because the people, the deep people, is a sort of inner resistance in the mind, the sort of inner resistance. You cannot fight it directly because, we are in submersion with TV emission, moral speeches everywhere. The only thing is the fight of the tiger against the elephant, the little against the great. And this is why we must be very intelligent, much more intelligent than our adversary. We are in the same situation than the dissident in USSR, which have to cope with the state of USSR, of the global communism. Very strange. But this is not because the system is strange, that he is alive, that he will be alive. Because this system of culpability, it has an enormous feebleness. They say, everything is going very good. Official ideology say everything is very good. Everybody is friends. We're all friends in a multiracial countries. This is official propaganda. And in the reverse, there is a thing that people are seeing. An English philosopher said, the first act of resistance is to say, I don't believe which I read and which I heard, but which I see. And of course, fortunately, the people are seeing the things. This is why, for example, with the identitarian, they are building things like on internet, real films, which happens really in the suburbs, make conference, publish books, even in background, We have to make a word of background, of resistance, but we must resist, because in history, the things are never definitive, the things are never ended. Everything can return itself, Yes.
Can I ask a question? Wesley Clark, he's an American general, and after he bombed Serbians on behalf of a group of Muslim terrorists, and they called the KLA. He actually said something to the effect, this will definitively prove that no nation can be based on race, or something to this effect.
Yes.
And so my question is, I'm very happy for a Frenchman to overcome anti-Americanism and to say, vive la blanche américaine. Yeah, that's wonderful. But don't you think from the perspective of Schmitt, that the American empire and the American government is the primary enemy, in the sense that they are willing to use violence in order...
Very good question. In fact, you must separate always the government and the people, the nation and the government, always. Of course, when you have in America, when Mr. Clark, General Clark said this, in the American government, you have lobbies. The interest was to Islamize Europe. The Islamism was to feeble Europe, and to say, a multi-Russian army is much more strong than another army. But no, even in the French army, they don't know this. It's stupid. You must separate only why anti-Americanism, the confusion, always, the confusion between American culture, American government, American people, complete confusion. I say two histories. First histories. Multiracial armies are very strong. Okay. Do you know what happened 1 year ago in the nuclear French air carrier Charles de Gaulle, which was in Afghanistan? They said, for integration of these very sympathetic Arabs, were proposed to have 100 of them aboard of the air carrier. The air carrier have to bomb Afghanistan. I don't know why. Suddenly they refused. No, this is our brothers of race. This is our brothers of religion. They were French military, they were French military. They make, in board of the air carrier, a revolt, broken down on the planes, and so, they were obliged to help parachutists and military police to stop it. And the air carrier have to return back to the Mediterranean to put them in jail. It was horrible. It was a terrible problem. In the French army now, there is tentative of integration of people from immigration. It is horrible. The level of fighting is completely slowing down, And they said, but there is official ideology and the reality, It is, second thing, it is, one day I wrote personally things 20 years ago against American imperialism. I make a reflection because I say America is not a block. You have culture, a certain other culture. You have the governments are not the same. You have a people, white people. You have a nation. This is completely different. A country is never a block. One day I was invited in Rome to speak about, the conference was about American resistance of European culture. It was in fact Italian culture, faced to the American cultural imperialism. I say them two things. Create something first. Create. Why the American series are always in Italy? Do you create yourself? No. So, of course, there's only, they invade my house, but I have not serrure. Comment on dit serrure? Lock, I am not locked, of course. And he said me, all these things, he said, we are very threatened by American imperialism, it's terrible, cultural imperialism, with a perfect American accent. Said to him, ma parla italiano, parla francese. Tu capisci il francese, tu capisci l'italiano. It means, speak to me French, to speak to me Italian. I personally speak Italian. I personally speak French. You don't speak a word of French. You don't speak, and you speak me in English to criticize the American civilization. It's completely mad, So I have to conclude. I am absolutely against this idea of opposition as between Europe and United States or Europe and Russia. It's stupid, The main idea, even if you have an American government which is against Europe, and even if you have it's not a question of government, it's a question of long term. You must be intelligent, you must be clever. So some persons are stupid. They said, the General Clark, I say something against the European, like Mrs. Albright. But this is not because of this, that the American are an enemy. It is completely stupid, like Alain Benoit. It is completely stupid. Our main enemy is America. And he doesn't speak a word of English. He never read a book of America. He was in America only 2 days. It's stupid. It's really very dangerous. Exactly like those who are against Russia. They said, exactly, I heard the Greeks threaten. Now it's a Russia because they refuse the gas. They refuse the petrol. Mr. Putin is a monster. We must have an alliance with the Arabs to preserve our petroleum sources. Stupid. It's stupid. Of course, Russian and American are brothers. They are brothers. Of course, despite the government. This is why brothers in arms. Arms, it's a long battle. It's not the battle of a political battle. Brother in arms, it means that the whites from Europe, United States, Canada, even Argentina, even Australia and Russia are brothers in arms. Not in a geopolitical perspective, but in a long-term perspective. Geopolitical, not only long-term defense of Earth, because the 21st century will be a century of global race fighting, civilization fighting. It is sure, it has begun, So it is important that a movement like American Renaissance exists, because it has not been directly politic, not with a party. It needs not party, but it was as a member of a most global movement, which is, the name is not important, Global White Race Renaissance. In Russia, they have been with Pavel Tulaev. They begin to build this, in Moscow, I'll stop with this.
If France and other nations in Europe were to fall under Muslim control, that would have catastrophic effects for the state of Israel. What are the Jews in France and European Jewry in general doing to combat this Islamization?
Of course, I wrote that, yes. I know absolutely this question, very important. I wrote a book about this, which is La Nouvelle Question Juive. That is a new Jewish question. It was a great debate in France, and some person say that it was agent of Mossad, some other, The problem, I spoke with authority of the Jewish movement in France, and they said, there is divided in two parts. One of them say, we all dominate the Arabs, we are anti-racist, we don't want to have the links with National Front, it's not immigration is not a danger, it's not a problem. The other side said, no, it's false. We have terrible problem against the Jews in France by the Arabs. There is 600,000 Jewish in France. 6 million of Arabs, 10 more. And there is great problem in the schools. The young Jews cannot be in the public school now because they are attacked by the Arabs, There is great problems. And the French state closed its eyes completely. So the Jewish French community is divided in two parts. But the majority of the Jews says, our first preoccupation is Israel, is ourselves, not France. Some ones are French patriotic, as the intellectual in France, Éric Zemmour, which is a French patriot, not Jew. He's Jew, but he don't feel himself as a Jew. And the great majority of the Jews now, apart from certain intellectuals, certain organizations, they said it's a dramatic thing because we help Arabs, we help multiracial societies, we help anti-racism, and we are the victims of the Arabs and the Muslims in France. How to do? It's terrible. And they don't know exactly what they are. And second thing, I said, if the state of Israel fall down face to the Arabs, it will be a symbolic event, fantastic for the others. Because for the Arabs, in France, Israel is the first step, the first, comment on dit, bouclier, the first shield, the first shield, of the white world, of the Western world, This is not ideology, this is reality, this is the way of people are thinking, So this Jewish question is much more important now. And in France, a thing very important, the Jewish has not power in economy, not in industry, not in finance. They have power in media, in certain media, And in the schools, for example, they are afraid. They are very afraid. This is my answer to your question.